Everyone, today I'm putting out another skill priority guide for champions this time, similar to the ones I've done previously for Defender and Vanguard. I don't really have any sort of rhyme or reason to the order I'm doing this in, it's just almost kind of like the first class I see when I'm thinking about which one to do next is the one I do, so this time is champion. This is going to be fairly similar to the Vanguard one in the sense that the champion class is very homogeneous. There's very similar skill trees amongst themselves with only some key minor differences. Figure that there is still some difference between them that is maybe worth going over and the usual stuff. To start off with, I'm gonna begin with the Black Knight. The Black Knight is the Tyrant alignment hero, so you actually recruit him around 7 or 8. I can't remember which exactly. I don't really pay super close attention to that stuff, maybe I should. But you do get him around a level where he will have access to his tier 2 abilities. Now, with this in mind, I do think that the highest priority for the Black Knight is his leap attack. This is what sets him apart from the other champions, is the fact that he has a mobility move and an extremely powerful mobility move as well. It doesn't have like any sort of crazy range, it's only 2 to 5, but that's still much more efficiency than other champions get access to because it comes with an attack as well as an AoE. It creates a 3x3 AoE upon impact, so with other abilities you get later on, this can set up some crazy combo potential. You're going to want to increase the range on this as soon as possible. I think this is the highest priority upgrade on this, then followed by the cooldown, and then increasing the damage of it. I don't usually bother with weaken, because usually the enemies that I'm going to be leap attacking to will either be killed by the Black Knight on his turn, or they'll be weakened enough where the rest of my party will finish them off for him. If you find that you're maybe not finishing off your enemies after leap attacking at them, then this is definitely worth taking, but just with how I play, I don't think this one is that necessary. Following that up, you want to make sure you have Rage. Rage is sort of the signature passive for champions. I think the most important one is Extended Rage for the damage bonus, and Bloodlust for the AP refund. Anger management is useful. There are some fights later in the game that can be pretty lengthy, and having this extra turn to mitigate the damage fall off is useful, but there will be a number of encounters where this won't be such a big deal. At that point, I start looking into tier 2, and the first thing I always get is Armorer. Champions struggle a bit with their AP because the heavy armor has that -2 penalty. Getting that down to -1 or 0, depending on which type of heavy armor you like to use, is a big deal. That extra AP can definitely make a difference. Following that up, though, is Earthshaker, probably their strongest offensive move, I think. It has such great range, the ability to just hit such a large amount of enemies in a line, goes through cover, goes through objects. Just a great ability, you get lots of kills with this, and it does offer them some range, so if an enemy is some distance away, even if it's only one of them, sometimes it is worth just using Earthshaker on them. And again, as usual, the first thing I always go for is the range and then the damage. I don't bother with knockback, because I have to go chasing after them as a champion, and I think using Earthshaker as a damaging tool rather than a crowd control tool is a much better use of it, and the same goes for the slow. Following that, I pick up Power Attack, and the first thing I grab is Ready to Purge, bring this down to 4 AP cost, and it does go up to 5 again if you take Stunning Blow, but I don't always take Stunning Blow, I kind of flip-flop on it, but Initiator is the second one I take. That extra 25% when they're full is a huge difference. You will definitely find yourself being able to just kill some enemies outright if they're at full health, whereas if they were just slightly damaged, you end up not being able to get the kill. Moving into tier 3, and this is going to be pretty universal for all the champions, so I'll try not to repeat myself too much. Black Knight does have a unique skill here with Blood Hex, but unfortunately I just don't think this synergizes with the rest of his toolkit very well. I think thematically it works, but just mechanically there isn't really much use to it. The first thing I always get, though, is Damage Focus. The ability to just sort of pass your first turn and then get a bunch of bonuses for the second turn really boosts the killing potential and the ability to start generating those rage stacks. Once I pick up damage focus, the first two things I'm picking up on it is save strength to get the extra AP going into the next turn, so that's more actions you can do, and smite the weak, extra damage, so now it's 8% instead of 5. After I get these two upgrades, I pick up melee expertise, and then as soon as I'm able, Killing Spree. Killing Spree is a phenomenal move. Honestly, if you wanted to switch the order and go for Killing Spree first before the damage focus stuff, that makes sense too. Honestly, they're both so good. I don't think one needs to be before the other. This is kind of your own preference. After I've gotten these basic upgrades, usually then I'll go for Readiness because that armor buff you can get really does make a big difference to your champion survivability. And past that, I start to go back and really pick up other upgrades. I go for damage upgrades on things like Cleave, and on your basic strike, you're definitely going to want to pick up Glory Kill for the cooldown reduction. That's a very big component to what makes champions strong. And then after I've picked up Glory Kill, Strong Grip, some damage boosts on Cleave, then I go for extra area damage to boost the damage on Cleave and Leap Attack and Earthshaker. If I haven't picked up Vengeance by this point, it is useful, but not something major. It is some extra damage you can get. This one is something you're going to want to pick up, as well as Avenger. It's just some extra AP. The upgrades on this, I generally avoid. And then the last sort of major important piece, this is a very strong ability, but I usually don't bother picking it up until late game, just because by that point, your champion has become sort of efficient enough to actually have some decent length turns and actually get some mileage out of Juggernaut. I find early on, you'll be taking like 2 steps and then doing an attack, and I think you're better off picking up other active skills and upgrades and passives that are going to be a larger contribution than Juggernaut in the early game. This is a very strong ability, but it's something I think you should circle back to once you've reached later into the game. Next, I'll be covering Sir Lanvil and Sir Brunor. They have the exact same skill tree, so anything I say for Lanvil, you can apply to Brunor. The main difference is you do get Sir Lanvil very early, so there is much more sort of order to picking up his skills. And I think the first thing you should do with him is make sure he has defensive stance and start putting some upgrades into it. I'm not really sure about the debuff resistance, but the temporary HP is a huge one. Getting the steadiness here for the armor reduction buff, also great, and then the cooldown once that's fully available. If you're playing on a higher difficulty, hard or very hard, this will save your champion from a lot of damage. If you're playing with something like normal or story, and the damage isn't that high, you could probably go your entire run without really needing to pick this up. But for hard or very hard, I think this should be the priority in Tier 1. Following that up, you want to make sure you have Cleave and you have the upgrades you want on that, and then going into Rage. Rage is a good skill, but you don't really feel it as much until you get a little bit later in the game, so you're not necessarily hurting a whole lot from not picking it up early. I think prioritizing your active skills in Tier 1 is generally the way to go. Moving into Tier 2, this is basically the same as what I said for Black Knight. They have the exact same skill tree. Armorer into Earthshaker, into Power Attack, and then over to Vengeance. And of course, generally speaking, you'll be circling back to Vengeance after you've finished picking up your Tier 3 abilities. Going into Tier 3, however, it is primarily the same, but you'll see he has Whirlwind here. Brunor and Lanvil both have Whirlwind here instead of Blood Hex. And Whirlwind is a much more useful ability than Blood Hex. I'm a little iffy, and I don't think it's anything amazing, but it is still good, and there's definitely some situations where you can get a lot of work out of it. That being said, the most powerful abilities here are still the passives. You're going to want to pick up Damage Focus, these 2 upgrades on it first, Save Strength and Smite the Weak, or Melee Expertise going straight into Killing Spree. Once these have been secured, it's really dealer's choice. What do you want to prioritize? Do you want to go back and pick up Juggernaut at this point? I think that's perfectly fine. Do you want the extra area damage for your Cleave and Earthshaker? That's good. Go back for Vengeance now, also fine. But if you just really want to start using Whirlwind, jump straight into that, also good. At this point in the game for your champions, they've kind of gotten their crucial components here. As long as you've picked up the Damage Focus, Melee Expertise, Killing Spree, and have Rage with these, and you've been picking up the active skills along the way, you're pretty much done with your build in terms of the core necessities. The rest of it is basically just ordering how you want to fill it up. Whirlwind is a good pick, I think. You can hit a lot of enemies potentially with this, which combos great with Killing Spree. And yeah, I mean, that's really all there is to it. Don't want to trail on for too long. There's just sort of a lot of freedom once you get these core pieces together, and I kind of like that about the champion. There's definitely some things you want to focus on first, but there's still some freedom to how to build if you're going for what's optimal at the same time. Up next, I want to cover Sir Balin, and I could have basically lumped him in with the last two of Landval and Bruenor, because his skill tree is the exact same, with the only difference being two skills are swapped in the order you acquire them. So this is going to be extremely brief. Basically, what I said for Landval and Bruenor is basically the same here for 99% of it. You want to pick up defensive stance first. The main difference is he does not start with it. He will not start with defensive stance. He starts with power attack. So you're going to have to pick this up with skill points and start speccing it out. He does start with power attack, which has its pros and cons to having this versus cleave. It does make him a stronger single target damage dealer earlier in the game as opposed to AoE. So based on how you're playing your team, you want to take that into consideration. But power attack is still amazing, and it's the same upgrades. You won't have access to Initiator at first because you'll need to reach level 5 for this, and you get him at like level 1 or 2. So you'll take Ready to Purge and Defensive Stance as well as Resting Stance. Probably not Perseverance this early. There aren't a whole lot of debuffs. Then go into Rage. Going into Tier 2, it's the exact same, except the only difference is now you're picking up Cleave. I still think you should pick Earthshaker before Cleave. It has a narrower AoE, but a higher potential body count with how many it can hit at once, as well as just being a higher damage move, and also range. But Cleave is still solid. It's still something you're going to want to pick up. Having the 3-tile wide area, AoE is always going to be useful of any kind. And then Tier 3 is just the same as the last two. This is the exact same. And now we get to Lancelot. And Lancelot is an interesting one. He is extremely unique and has a lot of things going on for him that other champions do not. He has so many skills. And I will preface this entirely that I have played around with many different skill combinations with him, and a lot of them can work, and a lot of them are really good. It really does just sort of come down to what you prefer, so I'm going to offer this in the skill arrangement that I have found that I like the most with him. So if you hear me covering a skill that maybe you don't like and you would have taken something else instead, then just substitute that skill in its place and it will fit into that order within the ordering I'm giving, I suppose. But you do recruit him as the second rightful hero through the alignment system. So you recruit him pretty late in the game, and he starts off around level 16, I believe. So he'll have his entire skill tree fully available to you upon acquiring him. So you immediately, from the gate, have a lot of skill points to mess around with, and you're definitely going to want to respec him. So after you've either used the tome or the training ground to reset all his skill points, the same thing as the rest of the champions, you're going to want to pick up damage focus, these upgrades, melee expertise for Killing Spree. These should be the first thing you get. This will always be sort of the core for champions. After that, however, one thing you'll notice is instead of Rage, he has Lone Wolf. And I know some players feel this is a little underpowered, but it is what he has in that place, and he does still benefit from grabbing it. I do not think it is worth skipping. So Lone Wolf is just a damage boost and some other benefits if he is not adjacent to an ally. We want to get this up to 20% damage boost with the upgrade, as well as him starting with an extra AP at least. Following that, the next strength I think we should play to of his is mobility. He's the only other champion that has mobility built into his skill tree in the form of Assault. And Assault's a very good skill. 2-turn cooldown, 3 to 6 range, so it is a little bit longer range than Leap Attack, for 150% weapon damage, but it is single target. AP cost of 4, so it's the exact same cost as a regular attack, but just more damage. And you're going to want to grab all the upgrades on this, I think. increase the range, increase the damage, apply shock, and reduce the cooldown, being able to use it as often as possible, obviously. The only one some players may feel like skipping out on is applying shock, because if you kill them as you're assaulting to them and likely going to follow up attacks on them, it won't matter if they're shocked because they'll be dead. But I have found I don't always kill the person I use assault on. Sometimes I use it as a mobility move to just cross the battlefield, and then I'll turn around and attack someone else next to that target that I just charged at, because I didn't have a direct path to the person I wanted to hit. So in that case where you're going to switch targets, it is useful that the enemy who you attacked but didn't finish off and is now in melee range with you will have less AP, so they won't be able to counterattack him quite as efficiently. I believe Cleave is a skill he starts with, like you can't do anything about that. Not 100% sure, but I am like 99% sure. And for me, I think he just has a lot of other abilities that you should prioritize over Cleave. I don't bother taking the upgrades on it, but I do use the skill. Following the tier 1 skills, I do move in a descending order. The next one I pick up is Inspire. This is an extremely powerful support ability. Everyone knows how strong the skill is. Having this on your champion kind of makes him like a pseudo sage. First thing I'm going to take here, honestly, is Inspire. Then followed up by Armorer, because you want that AP reduction. And I actually skip out on Power Attack. I come back to this once I'm much higher level. I actually pick up Ice Spikes. It's a 3 AP cost move with the upgrade here of Ice Forge, so it's cheaper than a basic attack, but it can do more damage. Generally it will, with the Impaler upgrade and the Cone being able to AoE. It's just a very powerful skill and more AP efficient. After Ice Spikes, I generally pick up Radiance, and you won't have enough skill points, I believe, to max this out, but I think you may have enough, depending on how you're prioritizing your skills, to at least grab the skill. It is quite useful for protecting Lancelot when you do go charging off and end up next to a group of enemies that you maybe can't kill that turn. It's also, I find, useful for charging into enemies on my turn, blinding them, so that way if I have other party members adjacent to them that I want to back away, they're very likely to not get hit by the opportunity attack. After that, it really depends on how you want to build him. You can see on this one, I kind of made him tanky, but maybe you're not concerned about that. You could take these 4 skill points and put him over towards Whirlwind if you want. But I do think once you're reaching the higher levels, you should pick up Power Attack. It's an extremely strong single target ability, and that's always going to be useful. Nearing the end now, we've reached the White Knight, the Christian alignment, and I'll try to keep this a little brief. As you can see, we've gone back to sort of the standard layout for champion skill trees. The main difference here is, while Blessed Weapon is very strong, it only really becomes strong once you've unlocked these last 2 upgrades. So I wouldn't focus on this early. I would focus on it once you've reached a higher level and you get access to Consecrated Blade and Swift Justice. So you do unlock him around level 7 or 8, just like the Black Knight, except for the Christian alignment. So I think going in early on Cleave is probably the smarter choice, getting Rage with the extended Rage ability, and then picking up Bloodlust when you can, picking up Strong Grip. And then Tier 2 plays out the exact same. And Tier 3 also plays out the same. The only thing I'm going to mention that's different here is acknowledging his Holy Armor ability. As you can see here, it provides a huge amount of armor. You're nearly invincible for 1 turn. I just would recommend against picking this one, and if you're going to, pick it near the end if you're just convinced on picking it. It's a very low priority skill in my eyes, because most of the time you don't need this. It's just overkill. If you're taking readiness early on, like I suggest, with damage focus, that will, in most cases, generate enough armor for you when you need to turtle up that your champion will be safe. The difference is you'll also be getting damage boosts out of it as well. There's some good upgrades on it. Again, I just think this skill is overkill. You don't really need it, and if you're going to pick it up, it should be towards the very end of your building for the White Knight. Once you've unlocked the upgrades, though, of Consecrated Blade and Swift Justice, just to reiterate, pick them up immediately because it makes Blessed Weapon so crazy good, along with taking Arcane Blessing, of course, and you'll definitely notice a difference in your White Knight's performance. Last up is the first champion you actually get in the game, Sir Kay. And he has a lot of unique things in his skill tree. You can definitely see the skeleton of the sort of basic champion skill tree still in here, with a number of extra things sort of either swapped in or added in. He's the first hero you recruit in the game as you get him from the first mission, so as you're going through, I think the main way to go with him is to play into his strengths if you're going to use him, take advantage of his talented trait, and pick up his active skills first, in every tier. Due to talented, you can pick up an active skill and an upgrade to it, or a different active skill that you already have with each level up. So he can just sort of flesh out his toolkit much faster than a lot of the other champions, especially since you're going to be building him from the ground up. The first thing I would take is Death Strike, and then the damage boost on it. It's weaker against armored targets, but your party should have a pretty good job at breaking off the armor, and there isn't a whole lot of armor early in the game on enemies, so you will be getting a good amount of use out of Death Strike. Following that, I'd pick up the upgrade on Cleave, and then Strong Grip, and then grab Rage, and just kind of circle back around to get these two upgrades whenever you maybe have an extra skill point laying around. Going into tier 2, you'll notice he has an extra active skill, and I think Earthshaker is still the priority, but now you have to decide between Power Attack and Kick, and I think this comes up to playstyle preference. For me, I'd probably go with Power Attack. I like just doing the damage, hitting hard. Power Attack plays into that very well. But if you're looking for some support in the form of crowd control on your champion, Kick is very good for that. Not quite at first, but having just a knockback for a super cheap cost is very useful. There's going to be a lot of missions where enemies are rushing up on you and maybe they get up in the face of your marksman. You can use a kick on them, knock them away, and now your marksman can safely retreat, or your arcanist can safely retreat and not take an opportunity attack. So your choice here, I would say, ultimately boils down to your own game experience. If you find yourself getting rushed up on and needing to make room for yourself often, I'd pick up Kick first and the upgrades on that, and then Power Attack. If that's not something that's been bothering you, Power Attack first, followed by Kick. Once you reach tier 3, this is the exact same as every other champion, and you can go back and rewind to the part where I talked about Landvol and Bruenor, because everything I said for them is the exact same here, except you'll notice he has an extra skill here with Preparedness. Do not take it. It sounds sort of strong on paper, but in practice, you end up wasting a lot of AP most of the time that you're using this skill. So I wouldn't. And it also runs counterintuitive to damage focus, because if you use Preparedness, you're not getting the bonuses off damage focus. And if I have to use all my AP on either passing my turn by basically putting it all into Preparedness or putting it all into damage focus, I'd take damage focus 10 out of 10 times. And that's it for this skill priority build guide thing. Still not entirely sure what I'm calling these, but I felt like I maybe rambled a little bit in there, so sorry about that, and hope it didn't become too tedious or didn't repeat myself a whole lot. I'll definitely do my best to edit it down, but hope this was useful to some players out there curious about maybe how they should be building their champion, what order should they be getting some skills. I do know it's can be a bit of a struggle for some players because there's always that fear of picking the wrong thing. But I think champions do have a good amount of flexibility. You can pick a lot of their skills really in a sort of mixed order and still be fine, really. There's just definitely some skills, largely in tier 3, that you will notice a larger jump in performance sooner rather than later. As always, thanks for watching.